An unexpected twist on Piers Morgan Uncensored turned into one of the most explosive moments in the history of live television. Across from Piers Morgan sat Karoline Leavitt, calm, collected, sharply dressed, eyes steady. You could sense it. Something was coming. Morgan leaned back, wearing that trademark smirk, fresh off what he clearly believed was a knockout critique of Leavitt's recent comments on Capitol Hill. His British accent dripped with arrogance. "Ms. Leavitt," Morgan began, adjusting his tie with smug precision, "surely even you must admit your recent political performances have been more about building a personal brand than serving the American people." The studio lights hummed. A long breath seemed to hang in the air. And then Karoline did something no one expected. She reached into a sleek leather folder at her side, pulled out a legal document, and placed it on the table with deliberate calm. The camera zoomed in as she spoke, voice low and unwavering. "United States District Court, Southern District of New York," she said. "I'm here to serve you with something else entirely. Beat. You've just been served with a $20 million defamation lawsuit. Live. On your own show." For 5 seconds, silence swallowed the studio. That was all it took. Long enough to watch Piers Morgan's face glitch through confusion, disbelief, and finally, the unmistakable shadow of panic. The clip of his frozen jaw hit social media within minutes. Within 48 hours, it had racked up millions of views. 4 years, Piers Morgan thrived in chaos. Former tabloid editor. Former America's Got Talent judge. Master of provocation. His show, Piers Morgan Uncensored, had become a platform for his sharp, interruptive style, cornering, ridiculing, and often humiliating his guests. For the last 6 months, his spotlight had locked firmly on Karoline Leavitt. Segment after segment mocked her. He branded her a fraud, laughed at her speeches, questioned her integrity, her education, even her family. But Morgan crossed a line. 3 weeks earlier, he aired a blistering monologue titled The Karoline Leavitt Problem, accusing her of falsifying academic records, being under ethics investigation, and hiding financial conflicts of interest. Every claim was a fabrication. Every word, a lie. Karoline, a woman of principle, a trained civil rights attorney, and someone who understood the razor's edge of defamation law, had the receipts. And now, she had the stage. The interview had begun predictably. Morgan pounced first. "Miss Leavitt," he said, eyes narrowing, "your recent political appearances have been described as theatrical grandstanding." Karoline's reply was smooth, measured, controlled. "Piers, when you stand up to power, some folks will always call it performance. But that's why I was sent to Washington, to speak truth and hold people accountable." Morgan didn't blink. He doubled down. "Surely some of your tactics are questionable. Your confrontation with Justice Alloway, for example." Karoline cut in, polite but sharp. Legal scholars praised that exchange. "My preparation was airtight. You may not like my delivery, but the facts are solid." Morgan's smirk faltered. His voice sharpened. "Let's talk credentials. You're 34, barely 2 years into politics, yet you speak like a seasoned veteran. Isn't that presumptuous?" Karoline leaned forward slightly, eyes locked. "My record speaks for itself. I'm a licensed attorney in civil rights law. I graduated from Harvard, earned my JD at NYU, and I've spent over a decade practicing, including federal cases. And you, Piers, what legal training do you bring to this conversation?" Morgan stiffened. "I'm a journalist, Miss Leavitt. I ask the questions." Karoline cracked a half-smile. "Just clarifying who's really doing the interrogating here." By now, the tension was suffocating. Producers in Morgan's ear were likely screaming at him to regain ground. He grabbed a folder, flipping it open with visible irritation. "Let's get specific then," he pressed. "Questions have been raised about your financial disclosures, your ties to lobbyists, your transparency." Karoline sat up straighter, her voice stealing with fire. "Falsehoods you aired. Repeatedly. Without evidence. And now," she tapped the document between them, "you get to answer for them. Not just here, but in federal court." It wasn't just a rebuttal. It was a tactical counterstrike. A live ambush of her own. Morgan, the master of chaos, suddenly found himself on the receiving end. And for once, he had no words. The studio air turned heavy, every eye fixed on the table between Karoline Leavitt and Piers Morgan. "Go ahead," Karoline said, calm but unyielding. "Be specific. I have nothing to hide." Morgan leaned forward, scenting blood. "Reports say your academic records are in question, that you're under ethics review, that you failed to disclose financial conflicts." The studio went dead quiet. Those were serious charges, serious and false. Karoline's voice dropped into the steady cadence of a courtroom. "Piers, you need to be very careful. Are you, on record, stating that my degree is under review? That I'm under investigation? That I've hidden financial ties?" Morgan, sensing an opening, doubled down. "These concerns come from credible sources. The American people deserve the truth." Karoline tilted her head, eyes narrowing. "And these credible sources, who exactly are they?" A beat of silence. A perfect moment for the voiceover hook. "Before we continue, subscribe, because what's coming next, they don't want you to see." Morgan waved her off. "I won't reveal my sources." That was when Karoline landed her first direct blow. "You just made specific false statements about me, on live television." She leaned forward, voice like steel wrapped in silk. "My law degree has never been questioned. I am not under investigation. I have no undisclosed financial conflicts. And more importantly, I believe you knew those claims were false." Morgan shifted, uncomfortable. Karoline pressed on. "3 weeks ago, your production team contacted my office. My staff sent back documentation disproving every single one of those accusations. Yet here you are, repeating them." Morgan faltered. "Miss Leavitt, I stand by my reporting." Karoline's tone sharpened. "Reporting? Piers, you haven't reported a thing. You've echoed lies without verifying a single fact. You've ignored evidence, and now you're doubling down on garbage you know isn't true." The tension thickened. Morgan tried to grab control. "Now hold on just a minute." But Karoline's voice finally rose, not in anger, but in righteous fire. "No. You hold on, Piers. For months you've attacked me, my qualifications, my honesty, my integrity, without a shred of factual basis." Deliberately, she reached into her briefcase. The audience leaned forward. "You want accountability," she said. "Let's talk about yours." Morgan's face twitched. "Miss Leavitt, you're being oversensitive. This is legitimate journalism." Karoline turned directly to the camera, commanding the room. Legitimate journalism means facts. It means checking sources, giving people a chance to respond, and correcting the record when you get it wrong. What you've done is character assassination. She opened the folder. Dozens of pages, thick with evidence. "I have transcripts, emails, proof of every false statement you made. Proof that your team had the truth and chose to ignore it." The control room behind the glass exploded in panic. This wasn't an interview anymore. It was a reckoning. "And more than that," Karoline continued, "I have evidence you acted with actual malice. That means you either knew what you said was false, or you simply didn't care." Morgan's confidence slipped into desperation. "Miss Leavitt, I understand you're upset, but threatening legal action on air is not appropriate." Karoline's eyes didn't move. She reached once more into her briefcase. "I'm not threatening anything, Piers. I'm taking action." She pulled out a final document and set it down between them. The sound of the folder hitting the desk echoed louder than applause. "Piers Stephen Morgan," she said formally, her tone cutting through the air like a gavel. "You are hereby served with a complaint filed in the United States District Court for the Southern District of New York." The camera zoomed in tight. Morgan's face shifted from smug host to cornered man. His jaw locked, his lips parted, but no words came. This can't be real," he stammered. "You can't do this live." Karoline didn't blink. "Oh, it's very real. And serving you on air is fitting, because this is where you committed the defamation." The studio fell into stunned silence. The smirk that built Piers Morgan's career was gone. And for the first time on his own show, the provoker had been outplayed, live, before the entire world. Karoline opened the complaint slowly, the weight of it filling the studio. "The lawsuit," she said clearly, "alleges defamation per se, false light, invasion of privacy, and intentional interference with business relations." She looked Piers Morgan directly in the eye. "You've made false statements about my professional qualifications, my ethics, my fitness for public service." Morgan's eyes darted toward the control booth, but his producers were frozen, deer caught in headlights. Karoline pressed forward. "We are seeking $20 million in damages, plus punitive damages, plus a court-ordered injunction requiring you to issue public corrections and retractions." Morgan's voice cracked. "$20 million? That's absurd." Karoline didn't flinch. "Actually, it's modest, given your global reach. Let's be precise. On October 8th, you told your viewers my academic records were under review. That is false. I have a signed statement confirming no such inquiry exists." She flipped another page. "On November 4th, you claimed I had financial conflicts of interest. False again. My financial disclosures are public record. Your team had them. You just chose to ignore them." Each fact landed like a hammer. With every citation, Morgan seemed to shrink further into his chair. "And here's what makes this case especially strong," Karoline said, pulling another stack of papers from her folder. She held them up so the cameras could see. "These are your own production emails. They prove you received evidence disproving your claims before you aired them." She turned to the first page. "October 12th. Your producer, Sarah Mitchell, emailed my office about my educational background. My staff sent back my law degree, my bar admission, and my transcripts. October 20th. Your team asked if I was under investigation. My chief of staff replied, 'No such investigation exists.' November 1st. You asked about my finances. We sent direct links to my filings. And yet, you still told your viewers otherwise." Morgan's color drained. "We get a lot of emails," he muttered, shifting in his seat. Karoline leaned back, her voice steady. "So no, Piers. This wasn't sloppy. This wasn't reckless. This was intentional. You ignored the truth because it didn't fit the narrative you wanted to sell." Morgan wiped his forehead. "Miss Leavitt, surely we can resolve this off camera." Karoline gave a small, knowing smile. "No, Piers. You chose to smear me on air, in front of millions. So you can face accountability the same way." She turned another page. "This complaint also outlines the harm you caused. Since your attacks began, I've received thousands of threats, harassing calls. I've had to increase my security. My staff has been flooded with chaos, all because of your lies." Morgan gripped the arms of his chair, panic creeping in. "This is unprecedented. You can't just sue someone for journalism." "That's exactly the point," Karoline replied, locking eyes with him. "You weren't doing journalism. You were doing theater, creating entertainment out of defamation. That isn't journalism. That's reckless, reputation-destroying slander. And the law doesn't protect it." The papers rustled again in her hand. "This suit also seeks injunctive relief. If we win, you'll be legally required to issue retractions on your show, on social media, everywhere these lies spread. And you'll be prohibited from making further false statements about me." Morgan scrambled for one last defense. "This is clearly a publicity stunt." Karoline's tone changed, fire now threading her words. "A publicity stunt? I'm a public servant. I don't need stunts. What I need is for people like you to stop lying without consequence." Her voice rose, not loud, but powerful, measured, righteous. "This lawsuit isn't about publicity. It's about accountability. For too long, people like you have hidden behind the word journalism while poisoning reputations. You've made a game out of character assassination." She pointed directly at Morgan. "Well, guess what? Those days are over. Critique my policies all you want. But the moment you lie about my credentials, my ethics, my fitness to serve, that is not protected speech. That is defamation. And tonight, on your own show, you get to answer for it." The studio was silent. Piers Morgan's smirk, his weapon of choice, was gone. In its place was something he had never shown his audience before: fear. The moment was electric, like the air before a storm. Karoline's voice cut through the studio silence with the kind of weight that makes every head turn. "That's defamation," she said evenly. Her eyes locked on Morgan's, cold and steady. Then, without raising her tone, she delivered the blow that would echo across the media world. "And now, you're going to pay for it." The studio froze. Morgan, so often the one in control, sat stunned. His smirk was gone. He wasn't sparring anymore. He was cornered. Karoline calmly slid a stack of papers across the desk, every movement deliberate, unshaken. "Oh, and the process server is standing by just outside your studio," she added. "Since we're live, service is complete." The camera stayed on her as she placed the final page down. "You've been officially served, Mr. Morgan." The words landed like a gavel strike. She gathered her notes, graceful, methodical, then paused at the edge of the set. She turned back, her eyes blazing but her voice as calm as ever. "Next time you try to destroy someone's name, you might want to have your facts straight. In this country, we have laws. And you, my friend, are about to learn them the hard way." She walked off set without breaking stride, composed, dignified, untouchable. The camera swung back to Morgan. His face, drained of color, told the story. For the first time in his career, the provocateur looked exposed. 10 long, unbearable seconds passed before he finally stammered, "We'll be right back after the break." But the break couldn't save him. Clips of Karoline calmly serving Piers Morgan spread like wildfire across the internet. Within minutes, the moment was trending worldwide. One Harvard law professor tweeted, "This is how you handle defamation in the digital age: preparation, precision, public accountability." Even in Britain, Morgan's stronghold, the tide turned. The Guardian called it a reckoning. The Times of London went further, declaring, "Morgan's downfall is a case study in everything broken about today's media culture." And it wasn't just talk. The fallout was immediate and brutal. Talk TV stock dropped 14% after hours. Major advertisers froze campaigns. Boardrooms erupted in chaos as network executives scrambled to contain the disaster. It got worse. The lawsuit named not only Morgan, but the network itself. Damages: $20 million. Suddenly, the very platform that had built Morgan's empire was now his greatest liability. Meanwhile, Karoline's office received over 100,000 messages of support. Law students, veterans, everyday Americans, they saw in her not just a public figure, but a symbol. She hadn't shouted. She hadn't raged. She had stood tall, armed with truth and the law, and turned the cameras into her courtroom. 3 months later, Morgan's lawyers filed a motion to dismiss, claiming his attacks were just opinion. Karoline's team answered with evidence. And not just any evidence, recordings from inside Morgan's own production meetings. In one clip, Morgan could be heard saying, "Yeah, that claim probably isn't true, but it'll make good TV." The revelation was devastating. Discovery revealed that producers and executives knew many of the claims were false. They ran them anyway, for ratings. That admission cracked the dam. Lawsuits piled up. Regulators in both the US and the UK launched inquiries. Media figures everywhere took notice. A cultural reckoning had begun. 6 months later, a poll showed that 72% of the public supported holding media personalities legally accountable for spreading falsehoods. Suddenly, it wasn't just Karoline versus Morgan, it was truth versus spin, accountability versus arrogance. In the end, Morgan lost everything. His show collapsed. His credibility evaporated. His social media following nosedived. Advertisers fled. The man who once thrived on tearing others down found himself dismantled, piece by piece. Talk TV quietly settled. They issued a full retraction, a public apology, and cut ties with their former star. And Karoline, she didn't gloat. She didn't celebrate. She simply moved forward, calm, disciplined, and more respected than ever. In law schools and journalism classes, her case became required study. Professors called it a turning point. Students analyzed every frame, and a generation of future lawyers, reporters, and leaders saw in her a model of integrity under fire. Because this wasn't just about one lawsuit. It was about principle. It was about truth standing its ground in an age of noise. The lesson was clear: when lies get loud, the truth must speak louder.